I have not looked at any mock drafts yet. I didn't want to look at any mock drafts until I recorded an episode because I wanted to do a live reaction to mock drafts and then hopefully get this episode out before the NBA draft, and then we'll do a live reaction to the NBA draft. And then after that, we will discuss the draft in depth on the next episode, which is going to be episode 30 of the Nathan But Net podcast. So let's go ahead and look up some NBA mock drafts, shall we? Excuse me again. I have some hiccups, which is a terrible time to have while recording. But I know the Spurs were looking to maybe trade up in the draft, but I don't know if it's going to happen because I've talked about with CJ Hoop Talks on the podcast before that the Spurs usually aren't the type of people to trade picks or anything like that. But they did say that they are looking to draft up. So this is CBS's 2022 NBA mock draft. So let's go ahead and read through it together, shall we? Let me get this squared up, lined up real quick. Alrighty. So they have a picture of, I'm pretty sure this is Jabari Smith right there. So he's probably going to be number one. And I mean, he's in the title. Jabari Smith, number one, ahead of Chet Holmgren. So let's go ahead and go through this. Orlando Magic getting Jabari Smith. I know that Jeremy JX Remy is happy about that because he didn't want to get Chet Holmgren. I think that Chet Holmgren can still be great. The problem is, again, he needs a good development. And so Chet Holmgren going to OKC, I don't know too much about the development staff over at OKC, so I can't really comment about it. But Chet Holmgren does need to be somewhere where they can put muscle on him and develop him. But I think he really can be a great player. And Jabari Smith, power forward, he's something that the Spurs really need, in my opinion. But obviously we don't have that pick. But being a power forward with a 42% from three, and 16 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, really good. And it says right here, fits into the Magic's organizational emphasis on length and versatility. We can also put the ball in the basket. And yeah, I mean, that explains it perfectly. So let's go ahead and go to Chet Holmgren. I already pretty much talked about him. There's some scuttlebutt, blah, blah, blah. If he were 40 pounds heavier, Holmgren would be considered a can't-miss prospect in the ink of Anthony Davis, given his defensive impact, shooting IQ, and basketball IQ. 39% from three, 9.9 rebounds, and 14.1. I really wish they would put more defensive stats right here because his blocks per game are really important. Chet Holmgren is a defensive player, and that is what I like to see, getting more defensive players in this draft. And I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna talk about it more in the next episode. But I think that this draft can bring back a lot of defense for the league, being that like almost all of the first round draft picks are going to be small forward, power forward, and centers. So they're going to sort of bring back big men, bring back defense, and so on. But again, I'll talk about that more in a future episode. So. And my Google Chrome just went black here, so hang on. All right. Paolo Banchero going to the Rockets. So the Rockets just made a crazy trade for Christian Wood, which I won't really talk about because I don't have much comment on it. But again, I've talked about this many times before. I think that Banchero sort of has a red flag with him about having sort of this ego, and I feel like he could easily go to a different team than what he was drafted on in the next couple years. So I wouldn't heavily rely on Banchero for any team that drafts him, because I think we could easily see him moving teams very quickly after he is drafted, because I think he sort of has a high status of himself, which is good in a way, because you want to go out on the floor thinking you're the best on the floor. But again, it goes back to the coaching. You want to be able to have the coach respect you and respect your coach and that sort of thing. And if you have too high of a status of yourself and you just go out there pretending that nobody can tell you how to play your game because you know how to do everything right, it just isn't going to work out. So, all right. Jaden Ivey going to the Sacramento Kings. I don't know much about Jaden Ivey, but hopefully Sacramento doesn't screw up another draft, because it would be fun. I'm not going to lie, seeing seeing Sacramento back in the playoffs or anything like that, just because the amount of excitement that would be formed around it, because they haven't been there in so long and they haven't really been in the conversation at all for many years. Nobody's talked about the Kings ever since Kobe was playing. So I think it would actually be exciting if Sacramento picked up somebody really good and just balled out like crazy. So this is where the intrigue begins, since many teams are reportedly sending their best packages to Sacramento to see if they can move up to number 4. This is talking about the Spurs and other teams trying to trade up in the draft. The reason is Ivy could surpass the consensus top 3 in the draft with his speed, strength, explosiveness, and finishing ability. At the end of the day, the Kings' traumatic memory of passing on Luka, wow, you had to take that jab at him, should prevent them from overthinking this. Just take Ivy and worry about the fit with De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell later. That I don't think is good advice. I think you should get somebody that fits with your players off the bat, rather than just being like, oh, let's pick this guy and worry about team chemistry later. Because I've talked about many times on this show the importance of team chemistry for me, because if the players don't blend together, it just isn't going to work. We saw that with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert this season. It just doesn't work if the players don't respect each other. So Benedict Mathurin, who the Pistons could take with this pick is a mystery, so I'll go with the highest player left on my board. And Mathurin, he's probably blown away teams in his workouts and in interviews, and to me, he has an all-star upside, giving his shooting ability, defense versatility, and motor. So again, I wish they would show the defensive stat here, because they're talking about his defensive versatility. But he'll be a perfect complement to Cade Cunningham in Detroit. So he does play shooting guard. So if Detroit decides to keep Marvin Bagley III, which I really hope they do, because, again, I did a video talking about Cade Cunningham and Marvin Bagley III, and it's my highest viewed video right now. But having Cade Cunningham at point guard, a decent shooting guard, and then Marvin Bagley, you could see the Pistons start to move up with sort of a trio there. So that will be really exciting if he does complement Cade Cunningham as well as they're saying right here. So Dyson Daniels, shooting guard, 25.5% from 3, so pretty low 3-point percentage for a shooting guard, not going to lie. But let's look at what CBS has to say. So Daniels has been flying up mock drafts, giving his size and defensive ability from the guard position. So again, talking about defense. He plays with a calmness and certainty beyond his years, and his playmaking is truly reveal itself with better teammates around him. At the very least, Indiana will get a big, stout defensive guard with a high IQ. If his shooting eventually comes around, you're looking at a Lonzo Ball type impact. Okay, so Lonzo Ball type. So again, good on defense and really good with assists. 4.4 assists per game despite not being a point guard. So okay, good comparison there, comparing him to Lonzo. I haven't seen many highlights of him, and I don't have his defensive stats in front of me again, but yeah, it would be exciting to see that. So. Shaedon Sharpe, this is one that's been talked about with the Spurs a little bit, so I've kept up with him a little bit. I think Sharpe makes sense for the Blazers for a couple of reasons. If they end up keeping the pick, he's the most intriguing prospect at this point in the draft to dangle as a potential trade sweetener for a win-now player or two. Secondly, if Portland eventually decides to part ways with Damian Lillard, that's not going to happen. Commence a full rebuild, Sharpe is exactly the type of young player you want to build around. So they're putting Sharpe with the Portland Trailblazers to start a rebuild in order to get rid of Damian Lillard. I don't think that's going to happen, so I don't think he's going to go to the Trailblazers. But the reason I say that is we talked about last episode. Portland got rid of a lot of players, and the reason they did that is to get cap space. And with that cap space, I know Zach LaVine recently did say that he does want to re-sign with Chicago now. But you also have DeAndre Ayton and some other players that you can potentially get to Portland, and I really think that's what Portland is trying to do. They don't want to rebuild with a bunch of young players. They're trying to get cap space to get some of these veterans so that they can go to a deep playoff run or something, because right now nobody wants to play in Portland. But if you get some huge players like DeAndre Ayton or somebody to play alongside Damian Lillard, and all of a sudden you're in the conference finals, then that will start to pull some more players towards Portland rather than not being in the playoffs or being a first or second round exit every year. So Jeremy with 3 elite scorers. The Pelicans don't need to focus on offense with this pick. Agreed. They have Brandon Ingram. They're going to get Zion back and everything. Is a unicorn defender legitimately capable of guarding 1 through 5? Okay, I need to watch some highlights of him then, because that will be very exciting to see. Offense is going to be an uphill grind, but he's reportedly shot the ball well in workouts. It might be hard to play them at the same time initially, but Alliant with Sokin and Herb Williams will leave opposing offensive carrying in the fetal position. All right, we're just going to do the top 10 picks because, or actually no, we'll keep going because the Spurs have a few other picks if I remember. So, all right, Keegan Murray. This may be a bit far for Murray to fall, but the concerns about his athleticism and defense are legitimate. That's not a good line to hear about my Spurs. San Antonio will gladly take him as his three-point shooting and overall skill should fit a void on a team with a lot of young guard talent. That is true. He is a power forward with a good three-point percentage and 23 points per game. So that is good for the Spurs, but I wish his defense was a little bit better. But at the same time, we have DeJounte Murray, who was the steals leader, so that's good. But I wish that our if we're getting a power forward like this, then he would have a better blocking and better defense. But, we'll take the three-point percentage, yeah. Development staff, Murray could become an all-star level in a few years. So that's good to hear. So A.J. Griffin, a sharpshooter with creation and playmaking upside. Griffin would fit nicely on a Wizards team that lacks his shooting from the wing. He could play the 4 and a 5, featuring Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis. The problem is that Bradley Beal has been trying to be recruited by many other teams. So if you're getting him because he's a fit with Bradley Beal or Porzingis, that may not work out well because they might not be there in Washington for very long. So Jalen Duren, I'm honestly surprised Jalen has fallen this far. I really thought he would be further up, but let's see what they have to say. Okay, C loves a project, and Duren presents the best of both worlds. He'll immediately have the impact in the NBA as a shot blocker, lob threat, and rebounder. Again, so why is he not up higher? So, but he also has an intriguing side as a playmaker and eventually as a shooter. So it's easy to see why a team like Thunder would be enthralled. I'm gonna skip some of these because I don't really know them, so I won't have much to say on these guys. Ty Washington is somebody that I've watched because he originally was like towards the top of the draft. So the Hawks need a reliable backup point guard behind Trae Young for years now. Unfortunate if the Washington falls at number 16. He's an excellent off-ball shooter, and in the NBA he'll play more pick and roll, which is assessed as a scorer. So yeah, they're just basically wanting somebody on the bench behind the Hawks. And Ty, he's a great point guard. I've watched him a little bit. So I really think that that he will fit this sort of need that they're saying for the Hawks to create somebody on the bench for Trae Young. So again, we're going to skip some of these because I haven't really watched any of them. The Spurs, Dalen Terry, let's see what they say. So 36.4 3-point again. We already got somebody with 3-point with the pick that we had earlier in Keegan Murray. So hopefully, some defense. They say something about defense here. A lot of heat around Terry's name as the draft approaches, as it's easy to see why. His 7'1" wingspan projects him as a potential lockdown defender on the wing. Let's go. But he also has scoring and playmaking upside on the other end. We didn't see much of it at Arizona because of his role, confident, blah, blah, blah. All right. I want to see more defensive big guys to the Spurs. Patrick Baldwin Jr. Nuggets have already found gold with one highly rated player. And why not take a gamble on another? Baldwin was one of the top recruits coming out of high school. The problem with Michael Porter Jr. is that he gets injured a lot. So you have to, if you're going to compare him to MPJ, you have to make sure that he actually plays, unlike MPJ. So was one of the top recruits coming out of high school, but his draft stock plummeted after a horrific season at Milwaukee. If you look past the stats, you see a blah, 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 buckets getter. All right, cool. Jalen Hardy, Jalen Williams, Nikola Jovic. I've kept up with Nikola a little bit as well. The Spurs have, and he's going to the Spurs. I didn't even see the Spurs logo. I just saw the name. The Spurs have 3 first-round picks, so they can afford to take a big swing on Jovic, a legitimate prospect who goes well beyond having an extremely similar name to reigning 2-time MVP. Jovic is very rare, but the upside is obvious. At 6'10", he handles the ball like a guard in transition and has a deep 3-point range with a consistent quick release. So it doesn't say anything about his defense here, but he needs to work on getting his body ready, but San Antonio isn't in any rush. I wish that they would have, instead of saying, but San Antonio isn't in any rush, they would have put something like, but San Antonio can easily develop him, because again, San Antonio is one of the best defensive development staffs there is. So San Antonio is in kind of a rush because the fans are getting antsy for something to happen after our 5 championships, and now we're sort of standing at the 10th seed every year. But I mean, if he has a good 3-point, I'm hoping that we see some defense out of him again, and we'll see what happens. He'll probably end up going to the G League or something like that, because our roster is full right now, but we'll see what happens. So, and alrighty, that is it for the draft. NBA also has its own mock draft, but I think it's relatively the same. Jabari, Chet, Pielo, Jaden, yeah, it's relatively the same. Spurs getting Jalen Duren instead of Keegan Murray being higher up. So, who do they have for our other picks? Let's see. Oh, they only have it up to 14. Okay, that's unfortunate, but alrighty. We will talk more about it, obviously, when the draft actually happens, but I am excited for all those picks that they have. I just gave my thoughts on them a little bit about how some picks could work and some picks can't.